All right, hey, I'm back. I was gone for a little while, bunch of shoots. That's a good thing. But today we have a Pentax 6.7. They had a 6.7 II with 2 Roman numerals, and they also had a 6x7. I'm not real familiar with what all the differences are, but these are 6x7 cameras that shoot on 120 film, but they look like regular 35mm SLR cameras. This one has a 75mm f4.5 lens, which is a slightly wide-angle lens for this kind of a camera. And you hold it just like you would a 35mm. It's got a prism on top and a regular viewfinder, and you really hold this camera just like any other 35mm. It's like a gigantic 35mm camera. Now, if you find one of these and it has a wooden handle, that's a real nice accessory that they made for this. Some of them have it with it. This one didn't have it with it, and they're $100 on eBay, so I will live without it because I only paid $100 for this whole camera. So basically, there's a battery. It takes a LR44 battery, I'm pretty sure, and the battery check light you can see coming on. And it's got shutter speeds of B for bulb, 1 second up to a thousandth of a second. Just a normal shutter speed dial here. It's got a film counter on top of here. Here's your shutter release. Here's a button to remove your prism. And there's not a whole lot of bells and whistles to this thing. Here's your aperture scale right here on your lens. It's an all mechanical aperture. And you really just point, focus, and shoot. That didn't sound right. What's going on? I better open the back and see what's going on. There's no film in it, I know. Look, the shutter is open and it's not closing back up, so it could be the battery's low. No, the battery check light is still coming on, so it shouldn't be that. Maybe something else that I'm doing. This isn't like the most familiar camera to me. Although, like I said, it's pretty simple. It's like a lot of SLR cameras. There's not a whole lot to it. I had pushed this button earlier. I just got to reset. I'm not sure exactly what I did. I turned the shutter speed dial all the way around past the bulb, and that reset it. So now it's on a thousandth of a second. Let's try it and see if it shoots. That sounds right. That sounds like an accurate shutter speed. Here's a 30th of a second. Sounded a little slower than a thousandth possibly. Here's a 1/4 of a second. We should be able to hear that. Definitely heard that. So I don't know what was causing that to hang up. You can saw how the shutter was stuck open. Here's 1 second. That seems accurate enough. Yeah, like I said, it may have been a user error thing. I had pushed this little button. This may be the mirror lockup. I'm betting that's what that is. And I had the mirror locked up, and somehow that coordinated with the shutter speed. I'll have to research that and I'll do an addendum. But again, if you find one of these, it's a real simple camera as far as operation. If you've used an SLR, you probably can just load film into it and start shooting it, give it a test. This one has a little issue with the bottom of the photographs. There's like an underexposed area. It's almost like the focal plane shutter isn't moving evenly across the whole plane of the film. So it seems like there's some part of the frame that isn't being exposed properly and evenly. So this camera I don't shoot with too much because I'm not trusting it. I need to do some more tests with it, and maybe if I exercise it some, it'll come back to life. But at the moment, it's a really sweet conversation piece when you walk around with this thing. Like I said, it's a Pentax 6.7. It shoots 120 film. When you load film in the back, just like a 35mm camera, and you put the film in here, you load it onto the spool and you pull it across just like a 35mm camera you would. And you set this for 120 or 220 based on which kind of film you're using. It changes the pressure on the plate. You can see it says 120 and 220 right on it. And there's one other little trick that you'll find that you won't be able to shoot. It's not doing what it did. According to the owner's manual, you can't shoot this camera without film. And so when I open the back, it should have reset to 0. And it didn't. It's on number 1. So the fact that it's on number 1 is why it allows it to keep shooting. But if it was on 0, like it should be resetting, and if I turn it to 0, if I turn it to the load, maybe I have to manually adjust this. Now it won't turn. And it won't shoot. And this is real loose. You can feel this doesn't have any tension. This ratchet just kind of turns and nothing happens. So what they did was they made a camera so that there was no film in the camera. And this was at 0 or start, which I just turned it back to get it there. You couldn't shoot because this way you weren't thinking you were shooting film and there was nothing in the camera. There's a key that they sold with the camera that you put into this little slot right above here. And that would allow you to test the camera. But there's another workaround that I'll show you. If you push this little button, the center of the counter, and you turn the counter, it'll turn past 0 to 1 or 2. If you can hold that down while you close the back, now it says it's on 0. It thinks there's film in the camera. And this has got much more tension on it now. And now you can test the camera. Although it seems like it locked up again. Let's open the back and see. I'm betting the shutter's wide open. See, the shutter's wide open. I'm not sure what's causing that. I don't know if that's something that I have set or if that's something that's this camera. It could be the battery is a little bit on the low side. When I hit the battery check, the light comes on, but that doesn't mean always that that's the absolute truth. I'm going to move this shutter speed dial. Often when things are hung up, I'll typically go past the bulb setting and it often will reset it. And it didn't that time. It definitely says 0 or 1 on the counter, so the camera should be thinking that it does have film in the camera and it should be shooting. But it certainly is not. These are the kind of tests you want to do to make sure you're getting a camera that's going to work for you and not come home and be a paperweight. This is a really large paperweight. It has a little lock on the shutter button if you want to lock that while you do have film in it. And like I said, I don't know if it's something I'm doing. It did fire. The battery light keeps lighting up every time I push the button. I'm not sure what else to do as far as getting that to return. And so this is one I think maybe needing a little bit of service to be looked at. If you find one, give it a good look over. It's got an electronic shutter. The shutter is completely run by that battery. And there's a possibility if I take the battery out, that may reset the shutter. The battery's right there. It's a little LR44. And see, it did reset. Did you hear that? So this battery may be bad, and that may be all it is. When I used to work at a camera store back in the long time ago, before I started as a photographer, people would bring in cameras all the time and say they didn't work, and 90% of the time they were just battery problems. They just needed to have a new battery. So the first thing I'll do with this after I turn off the video is put a new battery in and see if that doesn't resolve the problem. Like I said, the fact that battery light comes on, that might be enough for you to say, oh, it works. So obviously there's something wrong with the camera, but it could just be that the voltage is a little bit low. I haven't used this in a long time, and it could be that, you know, that battery isn't so good. But again, check out all the shutter speeds. It's electronic. This should work now. That was 1/4 of a second. Here's 1/25. Now it's working again. Again, do these little tricks. Pull the battery up when it's not working. Turn the shutter speed dial past the bulb setting or the X setting if there's a flash setting like this one has. It's a good camera. It's an interesting camera to get cool pictures from. 6x7 negatives are beautifully big. If you do get one, send me some pictures. I want to see what you've done with it. And like I said, this one, I don't trust it because it has that focal plane. It's an area of the negative that doesn't get as much exposure as the rest of it. I'd say 15% along the bottom of the frame is not properly exposed. So that's one of the reasons I don't find this all that trustworthy. Anyway, it's Pentax 6.7. It's certainly a conversation piece. Hope you enjoyed this. I'll be bringing you more all the time. Hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.